What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Bischoff and Brown. That's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. This is the Detroit Lions podcast. Scott, my man, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good. We just talked a little pre-show. You were at the Lions game, the win, 33-28 for the Lions to move to 9-3. This win was over New Orleans. Hopefully, some of our Lions faithful that join us in the comments every week and subscribe to the show, which you can do at Detroit Lions Podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. But you were there. You told me a little bit about it, but for the listeners out there, I mean, how was the trip? How was the game? Anything that really stood out to you from that standpoint, just being in the crowd?
It was pretty awesome. Kent, it was nice to meet you down there. It's always cool to go somewhere else to see them play or see, anywhere else to see a team that you follow play. But this was a little different because there were so many Lions fans there. And I don't know how many exactly there was, but Mickey Loomis, the GM for the Saints, seemed to kind of bitch about it a little bit, that he was upset that so many season ticket holders would sell their tickets to, on the secondary market. And obviously it was full of Lions fans, but the lower section, at least from where we were sitting, it looked well more than, well over half of the fans in the lower section. It was blue, right? Yeah. And so I guess a touch of an illusion there. Their seats are blue, so it's hard to know. But, I mean, there were Lions fans everywhere over the weekend. And it was loud in there. When the Lions came out, it was just as loud as it was when the Saints came out. So, I would say, while I don't think it was close to being like 50-50, it was probably, pretty close.
Yeah.
But there were enough Lions fans that you definitely were not alone, and it was awesome. I mean, it was cool. Obviously, the beginning of the game was nuts because of the way it started,
right? And
then it all kind of dried up very quickly after they jumped out to that lead. But it was a really cool experience. Definitely a great city to get to if you got a chance to get down there. Eat the beignets from Cafe Du Monde. Trust me on that one.
Yeah, you were just bragging about them. I think if anybody goes down there, definitely check it out because it sounds delicious. And I don't know how far New Orleans is from Mobile, but I might have
a 2-hour drive, but do it.
Yeah, I might have to do that. Like I think I have a day buffer there when I get there for the Senior Bowl this year. So maybe I'll take a look and see if we can manage that, or if I can find something close, down there in Mobile that's maybe got that. But yeah, that's awesome. And Jared Goff even kind of alluded to the crowd and how well we travel. I don't remember who he was talking to, which player, but he had basically stated, maybe it was Teddy Bridgewater or Mark Brunell, but he had stated that like the crowd, the way that the crowd goes to these games to support the Lions is just ridiculous. And it's awesome to see because he's like, I've never seen anything like this. And he goes, that was the loudest it's been so far this year on the road for our fan base. So I think it's only going to continue. I can only imagine what it's going to be like if it came down to the game in Minnesota or something for the division.
Yeah, for sure. And, the other thing that was really cool about it was you could wear your, my 16-year-old was wearing his Lions stuff. And it's like, well, hostile city, none of that. Not even one time was there any hostility about it all. It was just, it was pretty much more like, you guys got a good team this year. I think you guys are going to win kind of thing. And, but it just, it was a really cool experience to be there and to watch that game play out the way it did. It was a really interesting, stressful game sort of at the end that I didn't think needed to be. But it was, there was a point I thought they were in trouble.
Yeah.
At the midway point, maybe of the fourth quarter, maybe just before, maybe at the end of the third quarter, I thought, they weren't moving the ball and, so, interesting stuff. It's always, this from being around, it's always different to be there watching things in person, it is so different than watching it on TV. And I don't know how much they showed of things that happened in the game on TV, but there was a lot. There's a lot that was going on in that game. A lot of, who was it? One of the Lions coverage players, every kick at every punt was pushing and shoving, and maybe even a little more than that with somebody on the Saints. And Jamal Williams was doing some pushing and shoving. He's obviously got some issues with some of the players, on Detroit. Yeah. He and Brian Branch went at it at midfield at one point. I was surprised the officials allowed things to go the way they did, but it was a cool experience. Lots to talk about though from it. So maybe we can condense a little bit of. Do you want to talk about defense and I can hit offense just a touch, or?
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get into all of it. I did want to start with I think maybe the big topic, because it feels like as good as this offense is, it kind of feels like it gets stuck up in kind of key spots in the game, like whether it's in the second quarter or right out of the half. It just feels like they can't really get out of their own way and drives kind of stall out. And I think part of that is because of Jared Goff. And you kind of texted me this, I can't remember if it was Monday morning or Sunday night after the game or something, but kind of talking about Jared Goff really sticking with that initial read, not always going through his reads or progressions the right way, and really just once he sees his guy, he's on it, and that's his guy, and he's either forcing the football, and we've talked about maybe his hand, and Mike Payton from A to Z Sports, who writes for the Lions, he brought that up in an article the other day, and I think it's worth having that conversation. But just from your kind of perspective at the game, allude a little bit or go into more detail on that, I guess, as far as Jared Goff.
I don't know that it's a progression thing. I think that there are, it's complicated, but it's not. So things look good for him. And, we've talked about he has to trust his receivers, right? We've talked about that, but I think it leaks down and it filters down to his O-line too, because he is a totally different player with when Ragnow goes out and Colby Sorsdale comes in at right guard and Glasgow kicks over to center. Goff is a totally different dude. Mm-hmm. It's almost like he just doesn't trust his line to protect him. So there's an element of his demeanor is different. His decision making is different. It doesn't look like he's either going through progressions or is stuck. And likely, I would say more than likely, there's a really strong chance that he is predetermining where he's going to throw the ball based on what pre-snap looks there are, and there's no consideration. I shouldn't say it this way because it sounds bad. But there isn't much consideration as to what the coverage does post-snap. Mm-hmm. So that's always super dangerous. When, let's say there's a specific play where they ran Gibbs in motion, and I want to say they slit the protection to the right. Gibbs goes in motion, goes in front of Goff, and then they throw this screen pass to him, 4 or 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And if Goff is really looking, there is no way he should throw this ball, because I think the defensive end could have picked this pass off.
Yep.
If he was really paying attention, or if he was looking at Goff, but he was looking at Gibbs, it ended up being like a 5 or 6 yard loss.
Yep.
But it's there's no way you can't make that throw.
Yep.
And just to be so stuck on it, that's where I'm throwing the ball. Or this is more, I was probably feeling a little salty about this when I texted you. So there were a couple of times where Goff, they threw short of the sticks a ton in this game.
Yeah.
And he threw a short slant when, if he stays right there, Jameson Williams is running open, and it's the same kind of depth throw. And if he hits Jameson Williams, he scores, because it's that 10-yard drag where nobody can stay with him. Yeah. And there were multiple times. multiple situations where that could have been an easy pitch and catch and a touchdown kind of a thing. And it's like he turned it down.
Right.
And I mean, that's always kind of a problem too. When your quarterback is turning down open guys, problematic. He had Gibbs running on a wheel. I think it was a wheel route on the sideline. He was open by a couple, maybe 2 steps. And he looked at him and he turned it down. And it's like, I don't know, man. Yeah. No, so that I saw live. There's a Goff problem. Now I understand that we probably shouldn't be talking about Goff because people get bent out of shape when we do this. But yeah, I think it's something that, when these games get a little more important as the season wears on, he needs to play better than he did at times in this game. And I know he had good numbers and that stuff, and they won, so it's cool. They're 9-3. We should embrace that they're 9-3 and be super happy about it. But I think there's reason for there's a reason to be spooked by this offense a little bit.
Yep,
there is.
And going back to that play to Gibbs where it was like a loss of 6, I actually have the play clipped, and if I could pull it up and share it and everything, I would. But I don't know if we're at that point yet in this show. But it's funny because he sticks to that play to Gibbs when over the middle of the field is a wide open St. Brown. St. Brown is wide open, and he had all day to set his feet and drive that throw. And instead, he stopped and turned and threw it to Gibbs. And like you mentioned, it could have been picked, but it was obviously a big gain or a big loss. And
yeah, it's like turning down St. Brown there to me is very problematic.
Yeah, and the fact that St. Brown only had 2 catches in the game, which is fine, but his last reception was at the 2-minute mark in the second quarter. Like, that's just mind-blowing to me when he is one of the most consistent receivers in football. And he wasn't creating a ton of separation. Alontae Taylor did a great job with him. Alontae Taylor's kind of turning into a stud, and at times Paulson Adebo would jump on him. But yeah, I don't know. I'm with you a little bit on this because I think Goff really starts to get into rhythm with a certain guy, and he starts feeding that guy and forcing it to him. And that's what happened, I think, with Laporta here, because he had the historic day. I mean, for him, it was a historic career day, 9 receptions.
He's ridiculous.
Yeah. His pacing and his routes, his ability to run after the catch, the catch on third down, like the pass to Reynolds was great, but the one before that on third down, I thought was even bigger because the pass was behind Laporta. Yeah, and he had to adjust, and he had a safety, the single high safety, coming down on him. So,
and I was sitting in the stands, like squeezing my cheeks, kind of thinking, like, we're in trouble, So yeah, I mean, huge reception there, but again, it's not that either of us we're not bitching about Goff. It's just recognizing some of the limitations of his play right now, and then projecting that forward, like. What are you going to do? What are you going to do against Dallas?
Right.
How are you going to handle pressure? Let's say wherever they end up in the playoffs, there's pressure there. There's both physical and mental pressure there that you're going to have to play through. And I don't think New Orleans is very good on defense. They have a good offense, but I don't think they do anything great on defense. And for him to be turning down open guys and, leaving as much on the field as he did. And then, they didn't run it well. I don't think Montgomery had a real good day running the ball. There were a couple of where you could see he misread leverage and that kind of stuff, but interesting to be there and see it and to see some of what could have been. And I know it's easy to say that. So 9-3. It's awesome. What'd you see from their defense?
I mean, we talked about him before the show. Brian Branch, he's a stud. I mean, he was everywhere. Bruce Irvin kind of provided a spark. It brought some speed. It felt like when teams would slide their protection over, it allowed Aidan Hutchinson to get a little bit more pressure. He had 7 pressures in this game. Almost had, I think, 2 or 3 sacks. Yeah. And he again.
Now, did you see when teams slide away from Hutchinson, how that opens the opportunity for Irvin to kick inside?
Yep.
That's how he just about killed Carr.
Yeah.
You know, like you need that.
He looped around inside.
Yep.
Yeah. No, and it's nice because it's you now have that speed element that you didn't have before. You have the explosive element that you didn't have before. Like Josh Pascal, cool, good player, but he's not as explosive. You know, Benito Jones is not.
He played good. He played good.
And Pascal played great. And I'm glad he did because I wrote the article on Levi Ozarike and Josh Pascal kind of, you know, those were those second round picks in the first 2 drafts here in Detroit, and they're not really working. And all of a sudden, Pascal has a great game. Yeah. I will say Brian Branch, and we won. We'll take it, 33-28. The Brian Branch tip, I think this kind of gets forgotten about because of just the touchdown that followed from it and how close this game was. But really, this could have been a 9-point game. I mean, it potentially could have been even, you know, maybe more, maybe like a 12-point game because Brian Branch had that tip pass on third down that Olave just somehow caught. But Jerry Jacobs was in position to pick that ball off. I don't think he would have scored, but who knows? And even if he would have dropped it, okay, it's a field goal. Maybe it's 4th down. Do they go for it? Who knows? You know, but there's
and I don't know. So it's interesting because I don't know where Branch came from there, but it's like, you know, how does he end up there? You know, and
athletic play. It's just an athletic play. I mean, he was kind of in that curl to flats. And Jerry Jacobs, I think they were running cover 3, if I remember correctly. They inverted a safety down, and Jerry Jacobs had an outside third. Sutton had the other outside third, and Brian Branch was just coming down playing curl to flats, and the ball was kind of hung up there, and he just made that play. But it was a lucky bounce for the Saints, and you know they got the lucky bounce. We got the lucky bounce on one of the first plays of the game. With Brian Branch. So. Yeah, it's just great to see him back. As far as like putting him down in the box, it felt like against the Packers, he was covering the slot too much and away from the box. He was down in the box and they were blitzing him. And he had a strong day, but moving aside from Bruce Irvin and Brian Branch and Aidan Hutchinson and even Josh Pascal, the player that stepped up the most, I thought, was Jack Campbell by far. To play in the middle, to man that down, and to not miss a single tackle after having a tough week the week before just goes to show how much promise he has as a young player in this league. And he was intense, dude. He was slapping Hutch on the helmet, slapping the guy.
The way he moves.
Like, so fluid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he covers so much ground. He looked good. He really, who looked really good was Jalen Reeves-Maybin. He had a really good game.
Where did that come from?
I'm like, who's this dude? And we're sitting 17 miles from the field, so I couldn't see I couldn't see names, and I'm blind as could be anyway. So it's like, So I see the scoreboard. Oh, it's Jalen Reeves-Maybin. I really liked him when he was coming out, but he looked good on coverages, and I thought he played pretty good. But Campbell moves really well. It was interesting how New Orleans used Kamara, and at moments how willing the Lions were to give Kamara 5 to 7 yards over the middle of the field.
Yeah,
take it. Right, we're gonna kind of funnel everything into the middle and not give you anything to the outside. It was interesting, but it would drive me crazy to be a Saints fan with as much as they do with Taysom Hill. Like, I think it just crushes their rhythm on offense when every other possession or every third possession he comes in.
Yeah.
It's like,
and especially down in the red zone, Kamara drives him down the field with a big, 20-yard rush or whatever. He carries the load for 40 yards. And then all of a sudden you get inside the 20 and here comes Kalen Saunders and Taysom Hill. Well, geez, I wonder what it's going to be. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure.
And it worked. Like they were getting 4 or 5 yards of pop, and they were kind of stuck. Derek Carr got hurt and the rhythm of the offense kind of went away. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm just so intrigued that they still have him. They still utilize him as much as they do. And I'm with you on the Kamara thing. I thought he was going to get out in space a little bit more, but that's kudos to like Jack Campbell. There was a couple where Campbell was right in the middle, just right in his hip pocket. And it's like, dude, this is one of the more elusive pass catchers in the league.
And good tackling too. Like, really good tackling. Yeah.
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 And I'm glad you brought up Reeves-Maven because he had a field day on some of those punts and kickoffs and things like that. Like he just flying around, and when this team needed to bring some pressure, they brought more 5 and 6 man pressures, which is something we've talked about for weeks here on this show. And they did it and it worked. And it's like, okay, maybe they'll kind of stick with that. And who knows, maybe in a week or two, Gardner Johnson will come back and maybe they'll get back into the nickel and dime packages that we thought they would run in the summer. And we couldn't get it because Gardner Johnson got hurt. So
yeah.
But it's a great win. And if anybody's kind of hanging their head because they came out and scored 20, I mean, dude, they scored 14 points in like a minute and a half. I mean,
you traveled to a team that has a really good offense, and it's a tough place to win games. And you buzzed out to a 21-0 lead, just like, it was nuts. And that's hard. Like you take your foot off the gas a touch there, and then sometimes it's hard to find that pedal again. But 9-3 is 9-3, man. Like, at this point in time, for me, it's like, this whole thing's been awesome. So looking forward this week, this is a game I am expecting them to lose.
Right.
And, I say that for a couple reasons. Obviously, the McNeil injury is a huge loss, and it's hard to replace that. I think Ragnall's going to be out as well, so I wouldn't expect them to be able to run the ball all that effectively against Chicago. It sounds like the weather's going to be kind of rough there on Sunday, so I don't think we're going to see Jared Goff's best. And then, obviously, I mean, if the weather's rough, it's going to impact Fields and stuff too. But I just don't think it sits well for where the Lions are from an injury standpoint, and how they look with the rookie playing at right guard and losing McNeil. And I think losing McNeil that's lesser for this week, because I think Fields is more prone to having issues with edge pressure than he is, pressure up the middle. But losing Aleem McNeil is a problem, and the Lions are going to suffer for it. But it just feels to me like this is one of those games where, Chicago's a tough matchup for them. They have been for the last couple seasons. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on this one coming up?
Well, with Sorsdal, I'm intrigued with, because there's so many times where like you'll watch him and there's a flash and you're like, man, there's some good there. And that was a really good down block. That was a good reach. He climbed, duo, whatever. And then you watch him the next 2 plays and he's got this bad forward lean and he lets the guy go right away and just kind of like gives up. And I'm just a little surprised that we haven't seen like Dan Skipper out there a little bit more on the guard spot just for maybe a game in this pinch. And maybe we will this week. So I would be intrigued with that. Going to the Saints game with that first touchdown with Montgomery, they had 9 players up front and only 2 skilled guys.
Yes.
So I mean,
that was nice.
Yeah, I'm hoping would we see something like that this week where they just try to play bully ball and maybe they try to get that run game established and force everybody to come up, and maybe Laporta or St. Brown or somebody kind of slips out into space, and that's how your passing game gets going, because it sounds like it's going to be like 20 to 30 mile per hour winds, which is no joke. I mean, if you go back to like the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, there's a clip on ESPN of San Francisco and Chicago on ESPN, and Chris Berman's breaking it down. It's like 100 mile per hour winds there.
It's going to be an ugly game, and then that's this is can Goff drive the ball through the wind there? The only thing there is like you can go real short. You can go with a really short passing game, and the Lions they're set up there very nicely to do that. But you're right. Yeah, I mean, you're right. The first touchdown they scored, they went super heavy and added gaps, and Montgomery still, walked into the end zone untouched.
Yeah. They had everybody reach to the left, and then all of a sudden pulled Jonah Jackson out in space, and he just walked in, and that's not going to happen at the 40-yard line or anything like that. But, I don't know. I think that would just be an interesting way to maybe throw a wrinkle into the offense. Maybe we just see more heavy packages if the weather is going to be a serious factor. But, you see like the pregame and you'll see all this rain and all of a sudden you watch the game and there's no rain and the field's perfect and it's like you're living in another world. So we'll kind of see what happens from that perspective with the weather. But yeah, I'm with you. I think this is going to be a tough one. And yeah. I feel good about it because of who it is and because they've already had the close call. If Dan Campbell is who we think he is, and if these coaches and if this team is what we think they are, the close game, sure, it could be close, but they won't need, 2 touchdowns in the final minutes of the game to win this one. They're going to, they're going to go back and forth a little bit. And at some point they'll stomp forward and take the lead and do what they have to do to close it out. Will it be pretty? Probably not. But if they can find a way to slow down Justin Fields some way, and maybe it takes, Jack Campbell being the man in the middle and Aidan Hutchinson and Bruce Irvin playing more disciplined off the edge, so the zone read stuff, and the read option stuff doesn't hurt you as much. I think he'll be okay. If the passing game is going to affect Goff, I would have to assume it's going to affect Justin Fields and that offense as well.
For sure. And, this is an inflection point for their season. They're 9-3. You win on the road here to go to 10-3. And I think you situate yourself into, 2-seed positioning kind of feel.
Yeah.
Because it's Chicago, you get Minnesota twice, you get Denver and Dallas. So, just kind of looking ahead, like, if you can beat Minnesota, both times and you win this game, you're looking, there's 12.
Right.
So it just feels like this is such an important game for postseason stuff. And, Chicago's a tough matchup. It has been for the Lions for a while. I worry about missing Ragnow. I don't know how long he's going to be out. I don't know exactly what's going on with him. But McNeil out for 4 games sucks. And I mean, you've nailed it with the Fields thing. If you can just limit him and make him hurt you as a passer, which is hard, right. If I'm Chicago, I'm dialing up lots of design runs for him. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, you guys stop him. And then when you bring people up, we'll hit you over the top kind of stuff. But if the weather thing, that's a different story. But
it does make me wonder.
But
I was just going to say, it makes me wonder, we talked about J-Mo a little bit and how he's close. And if they kind of start giving him the football in space more, it's going to lead to more touchdowns. I wonder if this is one of those spots like, hey, you run that deep over and we're going to try to time this. And if the wind can maybe push this ball to you, or if it doesn't hold the pass back, hey, we're going to unleash you. And maybe that's how they get a couple of quick scores or a couple of big gains. And, they can run the football better than just about anybody. So, and I know Chicago, again, gives them fits and they've got a good run defense, but
they do. But look like the reverse last week was filthy.
Mm-hmm.
You know how far he jumped when he jumped. He took off from the 4-yard line.
Yeah.
He landed 4 yards into the
end zone,
like 24 feet. Like, come on,
MJ free throw line.
But he, that kind of stuff, the hitting him with short passes and letting him run, that kind of stuff. We'll see what cold does for them, cold and wind. But yeah, I mean, I would be, I know we're going to do a little prop bet kind of thing in the future here, but I would be looking at now a game of him scoring more than once, like him and with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah,
because they're so close.
Yeah,
he could have easily had 2 last week. There were multiple. I should say multiple. There was more than 2 plays where he had run, the shallow crossers where Goff elected to throw short of the sticks and they still got first downs. It's cool. But if he leads Jameson out just a touch, he's scoring a 50-yard touchdown.
Right.
Couple there. That kind of stuff where you're going to need huge plays like that this week. I'm really excited to watch this game because I do feel like this one is such an important one, and they will be going forward. If they win and they're 10-3, the next one will be just as important. Yep. To solidify the playoff stuff. But it's going to be an interesting game. It was. I don't know if you saw any of the San Francisco Philly game on Sunday.
Yep.
But that was a fun one to watch, just thinking about it from a Lions perspective. Like, all right, San Francisco punched Philly in the mouth pretty good in this game, and the Lions can do that on offense.
Mm-hmm.
They can do that to Philly on offense. So it was interesting to see that, but it'll be interesting to see what it looks like, because it was almost like a tale of two halves in that game. Like, the Lions looked so good coming out, and they made it look so easy. Like, Lions fans were celebrating 5 minutes into the first quarter, like the game was over.
Right. I thought it was.
It felt like there was no chance, but it's like there's a lot of. I mean, we're 5.5 minutes into the first quarter, and yes, they're up 3 touchdowns, but it's so crazy, to celebrate so soon. How else do you react, though? It was nuts.
Right.
And then, a couple of punts, and then Ragnow gets hurt, and game got tight.
And I think one thing, too, that holds them back, and maybe they'll start figuring this out as they start going on the road against a team like Chicago, when they go to Dallas, so on and so forth, here to close out the last 5 games. Like Josh Reynolds, appreciate what he's done for the organization. Not saying you got to let him go, but I don't need to see him going out there running crossing routes and catching the football anymore. Just pave that role to Jameson Williams, and JMO should start digging into some of Josh Reynolds' snaps, and that's just the way it needs to start happening. Like, if this team is going to be legit, now you got to start playing your best 11 offensively. Like, it's late in the year. You don't need to start rotating certain guys at the playmaker positions. And I understand they've got some playmakers. Like, you get the ball to Khalif Raymond, anything can happen. And maybe this is a spot. Like, maybe this is where they catch Chicago sleeping and they take a deep shot like we've seen them do against the Packers, the deep shots to Khalif Raymond we've seen in the past. But I just thought, watching film and watching the game, I'm like, it's cool seeing Josh Reynolds, appreciate him. I know he's got some chemistry there with Goff and everything.
Yeah.
And I get it. He's a cheap wide receiver 4 option, but like, keep JMO on the field at all times with St.
So that's kind of like the thing. It's like, Goff totally trusts him.
Right.
So that's a thing. And Jameson has to kind of cross that threshold there. And I think he's earning a lot of this now where maybe early in the year he wasn't, but no, I'm with you. I mean, you want to see some explosiveness and all that stuff. And I totally agree that I would prefer them throw the ball to Jameson over Reynolds too. But I wonder if that's a Goff thing, like, keeping him involved. I don't, the offense looks good. The offense, it's still there. I think there are steps they can take to be a little more efficient. But super exciting in some of, like, the Laporta touchdown, the St. Brown touchdown, the Jameson touchdown.
I got a question on it. As far as the offense, is it a little odd that it kind of feels like David Montgomery's been great? He's a workhorse. I get why they utilize him. They commit to the run game to keep their offense moving. I get it. But isn't it kind of feels like Jahmyr Gibbs was somewhat lost in this game. Like, they didn't have a role for him in this game. And maybe it's just because of the bad 6-yard pass that we talked about. But like, he had a run early in the game that set up the Montgomery touchdown, and like, his start-stop ability and that initial contact, like his ability to run through that is so good. And it's such a difference compared to previous running backs that have played for this team. I'm just a little surprised that if it just feels like in maybe the last 2 weeks, Gibbs has been put to the backseat a little bit.
Well, they're not throwing the ball to him much either.
Yeah, it just seems weird.
I think they'll get back to that.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, he had a wheel. I think it was a wheel route. I don't know for sure, but he was he was open running down the sidelines against, I think it was against the safety. And it was like, wow. You throw that out and let him run underneath it. And it's a 70, 80 yard touchdown because he's just so quick, and he was open right away. And Goff saw it and just saying, but it does seem like they have gone away from getting him the ball in the passing game. And I mean, I hope we all recognize that we're complaining that they have too many, dynamic weapons. I mean, think about it. They have Amon-Ra, who's uncoverable. They have Laporta, who's setting records as a rookie tight end. It's ridiculous what he's doing. And, David Montgomery's a workhorse. You have Gibbs. You have Jameson Williams. It's good. Yeah. It's good, man. They're 9-3. It's great. It's good.
Yeah, it's awesome. And, watching Sam Laporta this week, I'm not a pro comp guy. We've been over this, but there are times that you watch him and the movement that he has, I'm sorry, folks, it's Travis Kelce-like. Like, the way he moves, it's just different. And he did it at Iowa, and he's doing it here. And it just makes you wonder, every 10 years, there's a new tight end. Gronk, Kelce, Tony Gonzalez, so on and so forth.
Well, it took Kelce a little time. You know what I mean? He's a really good athlete and all that stuff, but Laporta is he is a dude. It's amazing how much he gives to that offense and how productive he's been as a tight end. And it's not just receiving either. He's a good blocker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dominant blocker, but he doesn't need to be.
Right.
He's a good blocker. So you throw in he's a good blocker with all this receiving stuff, and it's like he is. That's a steal. That pick right now looks like. And so if the draft were to happen again, how early would he go?
Man, I mean, thinking back, I'm just trying to think back to the draft. It almost feels like the one
before him.
Who did?
Kincaid in Buffalo.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Buffalo likes Dalton Kincaid a lot, and they do. I could stand with that pick because I think Laporta would be potentially off the board. Knowing what you know now, I just feel like the Lions might have taken him at 12 or maybe at 18.
I think the Lions, knowing what they know now, probably don't make that trade down and take him at 6.
Right.
He opens up so much for what they do. I'm just, and the exercise of that thinking is just what you stole there.
Yeah.
And going forward, how much he's going to offer them. If you think about the really elite offenses in the NFL, what do they all have in common?
Tight end.
Yeah. That guy, the guy who can gash teams up the seam and run after the catch and can, do the short yardage stuff, can help you as a blocker, but all that stuff.
Yeah. And that's a great point on the tight end, because it's you look at Philly, their offense is still very good, very dynamic, and they have one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, but their offense has struggled the last 2 weeks because they lost Dallas Goedert. I mean, that's a difference maker. And I'm not saying he's, Travis Kelce-like, but he's a very good tight end. And you got to wonder with a team like Baltimore, they lost Mark Andrews. What's that offense going to look like? I mean, I don't know. The Lions are very fortunate with the playmakers that they've had, and really with this draft, because had it not been a good draft and had this team been struggling, I think we would have maybe started hearing some mumblings as far as okay, did the Lions have the right guys with Holmes and Campbell?
Yeah.
And you didn't need this immediate success the way that they're having it, but the fact that they are just goes to show that they've got the right dudes on the roster, the right dudes in the building making the decisions. It's a good feeling at 9-3 with what they have. I mean, it really is.
It is. I sat back in the Superdome thinking, oh, we are in an alternate world. Because 4 years ago, it felt hopeless as a Lions fan. Here we go again,
Yeah.
And here we are, just as few 3 drafts later, and you have all these young players doing all these things, and it's just amazing. And then it's, we talked about it earlier. There's, there are issues on offense with some O-line play. And if anything, maybe that guides our, some of our judgments as far as, mock drafts. And when it comes to draft season, it's important that the Lions figure out that right guard position.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it won't be Sorsdale, but if the Lions call out the name of think Graham Barton from Duke, right? Somebody like that, where if they call his name in round 1, you totally understand it. Like, it's very, very important to both their quarterback and their offense to get that sort of resolved.
Yeah.
You're going to have to pay Sewell whatever he wants, But no, 9-3, really interesting game. They came out hot, and then it dried up, but they still had enough, they had enough playmaking. Laporta gets open and goes for like 50 yards, down the field. And just awesome. It was, it's a great thing to be,
You got me laughing.
About what?
You mentioned Graham Barton, and this just takes me back to almost 10 years ago when in 2014 we went like 10-6 or 11-5, and we had a high draft or a low draft pick, like the 25th pick or whatever, kind of trending in this direction. And
I know who you're going to. I know
we took a Duke guard, Langston Tomlinson.
Yeah. And ended up being a really good player, just not here.
Yeah, he didn't work out here, but he ended up he's a stud when he was in San Francisco, and I think he's with I don't know,
Jets, I think, right?
Yes, the Jets. He's with the Jets. So I'm with you. I think it's important, and I'm excited to eventually get there with the mock draft exercises, which we'll do, and we'll do the draft stuff. It's exciting, but for now, let's just enjoy this ride. 9-3 football team, going to Chicago, Soldier Field, searching for the 10th win. You got me worried about it now.
Well, I'm not saying we should be worried. It's just Chicago just seems to give the Lions fits a little bit. Justin Fields does for sure. And with the weather and the injuries, I'm just a little bit, I'm a little concerned about it, but still, like, thinking about being, getting out of this game if they win and they're 10-3, it's like, man, it's great. I mean,
what would
they're in a really good place.
Yeah, what would be great is just winning the next 3 and getting to 12 wins as you go to Dallas. And if that game kind of gets crazy at some point and you end up having to chase points or something is, just not moving.
Yeah.
Get the starters out and just play for another day and play for the following week, the last week of the year against Minnesota at home. And by that point, if they win the next 3, they win the division. So It's like, just win the next 3. That should be the goal, one at a time. Going in, I've going into the show tonight, I felt good. You got me a little worried, but I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be on the wagon, and I'm going to feel...
There's no reason to be worried. I'm just, it's going to be a really interesting game.
Yeah. And it's not going to be a cakewalk. It's, I think when you look back a couple weeks ago where they were, if you look ahead at the schedule, you're like, man, after the bye, we got this team.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I just wonder if Chicago, if those players even want to play for that coach. He's on the hot seat with the 4-8 record. Like, wouldn't surprise me if those guys make the business decision and are like, I don't want to play for this guy anymore. I'm shutting it down.
You feel like that he's got to be going on, like moving on for sure.
Yeah. It'll be interesting.
I mean, that'd be great if they decided they just didn't want to have their best day. I'm cool with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love a 20-7 win or a 24-10 win or whatever it is. I'll take it. Just win. That's all I'm asking for, and we'll figure it out from there. Because I do think the best football is to come for this football team, and it's going to come at the right time, unless they completely fall apart. But I don't see that happening. It just doesn't feel like that.
No, it doesn't. And like we talked about last week, being in a bit of a what you would consider maybe a little a little slumpy kind of a, vibe. And then to come out the way they did on offense and look the way they did, as hot as they did, there's a statement there. So, maybe they're trending back up and the Ali McNeil injury sucks. Injuries suck. I mean, it's a bummer that all these injuries are happening, but this year feels like it's been a minefield for injuries for, just about everybody. But, you hope that the offense has a good day and they can kind of force Fields to beat them in ways in which he doesn't. And then, you'd be okay. It's just, we'll see how that looks on Sunday.
Yep. No, I'm with you. I think everybody's going to pretty much agree with us. And if you feel like we're going to win, we're going to lose, whatever, let us know in the comments below right here on the Detroit Lions podcast on YouTube. And again, rate, review, and subscribe to the show here on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast platforms. And of course, follow us on Twitter, X, whatever it is, at Russ NFL Draft, at Bischoff_Scott. You got anything else for me, my man? This was a great show. I'm glad we got to do it.
It's good.
Awesome.
It's fun.
Well, he's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. This is Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions podcast.